Hello and welcome to the Big Travel Podcast. I'm Lisa Francesca Nand. Something different for you this week because today I'm in Spain. I'm in here for the week. I'm lying on the beach in my happy place, I would say. I grew up here, just a walk away. And if you know when you go to get hypnotized or hypnotherapy or someone wants you to try and relax and they say, think of somewhere that you really truly feel relaxed, and this is where I feel relaxed, lying on this beach. I can hear the seagulls, I can see children playing. I've got my children playing nearby, so it's not so relaxing. We're right next to the beach bar, so I can hear the clatters and clangs of lunch being served and tapas and drinks and coffees and people enjoying the sunshine. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the Big Travel Podcast. I know some of you have been listening for quite a while. I launched on the February the 6th, and well, it's been wonderful actually to see so many people from countries all over the world. I think we now have listeners in about 80 countries, I think. Of course, the expected ones, like the UK and all over Europe, lots in America, almost 40 states now, I think. But then Costa Rica, Mauritius, Barbados, Tanzania, Brazil, Peru, El Salvador, Vietnam, Cameroon, Romania, Guatemala, Fiji, where I've got a lot of family members. Saudi Arabia is a new one to add to there. Lots in China for some reason. Paraguay, Bolivia, Qatar and Pakistan are the newest ones on there as well. So I'm really grateful to everyone for listening, and I've got some brilliant guests lined up. People that have confirmed so far for the next few months that I've just got to tie dates down with include Eddie Nestor, the presenter of Drive Time on BBC Radio London. George Galloway, now that's going to be an exciting one because he is a very interesting character. He's a politician and he's controversial, and I'm sure most of you know him. If you don't know him, you'll find him a very interesting man in terms of travel. A fascinating guy. I just need to tie down a date with him. I've interviewed him before. We've also got an author who found herself homeless after a business idea went wrong, and she found herself homeless, and her and her husband ended up just walking. They had nowhere to live, and she's incredible. She's managed to bounce back and write best-selling books, and she's going to be very interesting. I'm thinking of taking a little trip to Ireland and interviewing some fascinating characters over there that I've been talking to on Twitter. And if you've got any suggestions of people for the Big Travel Podcast, do let me know, because I'm always looking for people. I've got a lot of space to fill. I've got to find someone every week, and some of the guests so far have had really high profiles and done incredible things and been on great journeys. Probably one of the most famous is Eamon Holmes. He's a national broadcaster in the UK and very, very big and well known. He talked about his growing up in a war zone in Belfast in Northern Ireland. We've had Lucy Siegel, who's on our screens most days on BBC One on the One Show here in the UK. And we've had Paul Ross, who's a very high profile presenter. Most recently, Clive Stafford Smith. Now, he has created a big stir, lots of conversation about the podcast on Twitter about him, because he's a very fascinating character and battles to get people off death row. And Hannah Martin is actually probably one of our most listened to episodes. She is probably not so famous on say TV and radio, conventional media, but she's really big online. She's a YouTuber and she's very big on Instagram, and she's a Bobbi Brown professional makeup artist, and she has done a lot of well-known people which she can't really talk about, some of them royal, let's just say. She's really fascinating and probably one of my most listened to people. And also another one of my most listened to guests so far has been Fabio, the DJ, a pioneer of jungle and drum and bass, and he used to have a show on Radio 1, and him and his partner Groove Rider DJ all over the world and have been to some fascinating places and had some really good stories to tell about parties all over the world. Another DJ, Nihal Arthanayaka, who was on Radio 1 as well, BBC Radio 1, but is now on BBC Asian Network, and again he's a very well-known presenter and DJ, and well, so many people. So I'm really enjoying it so far. If you listened carefully, I'll go down there in a minute, but you can hear the waves rolling in over the shore. It's a beautiful, beautiful day today, not a cloud in the sky. And it's my happy place because, well, my parents aren't here at the moment, actually. They've stayed in England. My dad, who's from Fiji, and my mum, who is English, moved here when I was just 7 years old, and this is where I grew up. And there's so many memories for me here. Looking up the road from where we are now, lying on my beach bed, I look straight up a road called Avenida Acapulco. This is in a little enclave of southern Spain called Los Boliches. And when I walk up that road, well, it's the road that my school was on for a start, but there are so many memories just walking up that street from where I was tiny with my best friend Lisa Ammon, where we used to measure ourselves against the wall and hope we were getting bigger, and now that wall is tiny compared to what I am now. Pillars, where I met two of my very good friends who came over from America, Karis and Sunda, and their dad. They came over for a year here from Portland, Oregon, and you know how the Facebook and the internet has got lots of people back in touch. I'm very pleased to be back in touch with them. My school, where everyone would spill out every day and I'd be playing with the boys and my best girlfriends, and some really happy memories there. And then also not so happy memories when I crossed the road on a junction just 2 minutes from where I was standing. It reminds me of the time when I was coming back from the local town centre. I've been out partying at night, probably a little bit too young for that sort of behaviour, and I got into a taxi, and the taxi driver turned left when he shouldn't have done, and there was a speeding motorbike coming up behind me, and I saw these two men flying over the bonnet of my taxi, and I was terrified. So I ran up the road to where my dad's bar was, also on this same road, Avenue de Acapulco, and then later on the taxi driver got in touch with me, and it turned out that one of the young men who had flown over the bonnet had died. And these are two boys I knew. Well, one of them, I knew the survivor very well from when I was a child, when I first moved here, and I had to go to court, and it was quite hideous. But it's been on my mind a lot recently. I'm not sure why, but if I hadn't have got into that taxi, I know this is not my fault. I know this is not my fault at all. They were speeding and probably drinking. The taxi driver turned the wrong way, and everyone did something wrong except me. But the fact remains that if I hadn't have got into that taxi at that particular time, if something had waylaid me by 30 seconds even, Sergio, the guy who died, that guy would probably still be alive today. And that's a very, very strange feeling. So this road, this street, this beach is full of incredible memories, good and bad. And it's strange for someone who's such a traveller to be coming back to this place so often now, the place I grew up. I was born in the north of England. My dad's an Indian Fijian. I don't know if you know what about the Indian population of Fiji, but at one point the Indian population was almost half of Fiji, and they were brought over by the British, because Fiji and India were British colonies. They were brought over from India to Fiji under a system called indentured labour. Now, I have so much to tell you about indentured labour, where 3 million people were displaced by the British. I'm half British myself, but the British did some bad things as well as some good things, and they were essentially used as slave labour when they got to their destination. And in my family's case, it was Fiji, and this was not what they signed up for, but they were stuck and they couldn't go back, and they couldn't afford to go back, so they just had to push on. And actually, as with a lot of Indian communities all over the world, they did quite well. They worked very hard. But when my dad was born into this community, he didn't have shoes until he was 7. They lived in a hut made of straw and sticks and mud down by the river, and had a lovely childhood by all accounts, but they didn't have much until my dad was taken away by Irish missionaries and educated as a Catholic, and along with that came a whole other load of problems, because it wasn't necessarily seen as a good thing back home, where the village people were waiting. Not those village people, the village elders thought, well, actually you're now eating cow, you're going against our Hindu principles. But it was a good thing for Dad, and Dad always wanted to travel, so he left Fiji around the same time as his father did, and his father had managed to find a passage back to India to meet family, long lost family, 2 generations gone of family. And he wrote to my dad, who by that time had established himself in the north of England and actually met my mum, and he wrote and said, I'm going to come and see you. And then one day his letters just stopped, and my granddad disappeared, and we haven't heard from him since. So there's a huge mystery there that one day I would love to solve. I have been to India, but never to the part where he disappeared. I've been to India several times, and I'd love to go back and trace what happened to him. So I suppose I should tell you a little bit about my travels, because I have travelled extensively, as you would expect from someone who does a travel podcast. I'm on TV and radio in the UK, mainly radio, and also as a travel expert, but also I write as well and create online travel films. Before I had my first child 6 years ago, I travelled very extensively throughout the world. I say some of my favourite places, which people always ask me. I really enjoy Cambodia and Vietnam and Thailand and Malaysia, all those sort of Southeast Asian places. I really love places in South America. Argentina and Uruguay is actually one that I wasn't expecting to love so much. And I love traveling around the States. I love going anywhere, but I do like some sunshine. I'm not one to be found. I have been skiing and I've done it several times, but I'm not one to choose. If I could choose a sunshine break and some culture and some nice warm destination with exotic food, I will choose that any day. And in the last 6 years, I haven't done that much long haul travel with the kids. I think I'm reserving that for later, but I go away every 6 weeks at the moment, and that's usually back here to Spain, where I am at the moment and where I'm from, and then some other little trips in between to Paris and Belgium. Last year I went to visit the war graves, which was incredible. My great grandfather, it was the 100th anniversary of his death in the Battle of Ypres in 1917, and we went along, and that was a very moving experience because I'd been there only once as a child. And he was the father of my beloved grandma and her sister. So that was a very moving journey. But I haven't been that long haul, like I said, just a few local trips. But we are lucky to have Europe on our doorstep, and we can go to the most beautiful places. I also am a consumer travel expert. So when I go on TV and radio and talk about travel, often it's about the consumer side of it, who's striking, what problem there is with the currency having plunged, what's going on in the travel news, that sort of thing, rather than destinations to go. Although some people want me as destinations to go as well. I was on Talk Radio this week talking about where to go in half term. So that's me, and I would love to know more about you. You can communicate with me on Instagram. I'm Lisa Francesca Nand. My Instagram handle is Lisa_travel and more. We've also got the Big Travel Podcast on Instagram. On Twitter, I'm at LF Nand, and the podcast is Big Travel Pod, at Big Travel Pod. I'm on Facebook, Lisa Francesca Nand, and I've also created a group for the podcast on Facebook. It's called the Big Travel Podcast, and there's about 1,500 people on there, so do come and join the conversation. You can find the website as well. We're on thebigtravelpodcast.com. You can find us on iTunes, on Spotify, on Podcatcher, and lots of other things. And I'd love to hear from you. I'd love suggestions about guests. I'd love to know how you're enjoying it so far. I'm really enjoying the reviews that keep coming on iTunes, and I know there's quite a few in the States as well, but in the UK we've got a different iTunes to the American one, and I know that there are reviews on there because I do see them. I get them emailed to me, so I'm really excited to have your reviews and your feedback, and I'm so pleased that so many people from all over the world are listening. I'm gearing up to bring you the best guests, and I'm trying my hardest every week, and I look forward to continue to do that on the Big Travel Podcast. Thank you for listening. Speak soon.
And spade, bucket 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 and pool, bucket.